G'day, my name's Craig Castree. I'm here on behalf of the Melton City Council, and I'm going to share with you some things you can be planting in your gardens over the next month or two. Autumn headed down into winter, so yeah, it's starting to get cold. I guess the one thing I want to try and impress upon you is to, whilst this looks really good, try not to plant like this, because unfortunately, you'll find you'll attract in your own pests and disease. Planting things in mass like this ultimately attracts insects. So where possible, try and split them up and surround them with companions. And as I move through this presentation, I'll be talking about companions. And this happens to be one of them. This is chives. You can get those in right now. You can either plant them by division or by seed. And I always plant them underneath my apple trees, because apple trees get codling moth, and codling moth is deterred by anything from the Allium family. So chives is one of those. You can also put garlic in the ground, which is my next point of call. Garlic. Make sure you get your garlic in. It's not too late, folks. So, and I always think about where I'm going to plant tomatoes. So in October, November, I tend to plant tomatoes in the ground. So it's really, really good to have a ring of garlic around where you're going to plant a tomato. By the way, I don't tend to plant tomatoes together because of the disease that they get. And if one gets it, they all get it. So rather start thinking about where you're going to put some tomatoes and get that garlic in. And in between times, you can start and put some of the Asian greens in amongst those while you're waiting for them. This is another one. These are shallots. Aussies get a little bit confused about what is a shallot and what is a spring onion. These are shallots. Spring onions are exactly what they look like, spring onions. They don't have a bulb on the bottom of them. So, and there's some gold ones as well as the Asian purple ones. They're fantastic, beautiful and sweet. Make a great addition on the table. Of course, you can also plant onions. So make sure you don't forget to get your onions in. Again, onions can be a little susceptible to black aphid in the cooler months. So try and split them up a little bit. Spread them out in the garden. Mix your planting up. Don't plant everything all together. As I say, it's likely to attract in pests and disease. This is another great plant to put in. Leeks, it's always a good time throughout the colder months to get leeks in. Again, try and keep those away from the brassicas of the other alliums, like the onions and the garlic and the spring onions. They all get a little bit of black aphid if you're not careful. Bok choy or pak choy, whichever you like, is a wonderful, also another winter and cooler climate addition to the garlic. Really easy to grow. You can buy it either in seed or seedlings. I do both. I start some from seed. In about 6 weeks you'll harvest it. So it's really, really quick crop, and you'll get several crops, in amongst your garden. So wherever there's a space in your garden where there's a bit of soil, put a bok choy in. Just so easy. What goes well on the plate together goes really well in the ground together. So the Asian greens, obviously, with garlic and onions and so forth. Another great herb to follow it up with is coriander. So, and of course, being the cooler weather, they tend not to bolt. So it's also a very, very good time to get coriander in. These are some of the mustard greens. And this is a Mizuna, which is like a Japanese lettuce to some degree. It's quite spicy in taste, but it's another great cool climate. Certainly grows well over autumn and into the early winter months. Some people like to try and tie it up a little bit like endive. That's another one that you can put in at the moment too, endive. It sort of looks a bit like this. It's like a curly lettuce, but quite thin and sparse. And if you bunch it up and sort of put a container sleeve over the outside of it, an old piece of pipe would be okay. It tends to blanch the stems and it stops the bitterness in it. This is giant red mustard. That's another great one. If you've had any diseased plants from the summer months, sometimes tomatoes and potatoes sometimes can get a bit of a disease in them. This is a great crop to grow in that area where you've had some soil-borne disease, because mustard will help fumigate the ground for you. It's a tasty sort of a green to whack in a salad, but bear in mind it's got a bit of a bite. It is mustard after all. Snow peas. Again, as I say, it's all about those Asian greens really around about now. snow peas and sugar snap peas, a really fine, easy crop to grow. Obviously, going to need a trellis of some sort to grow them on, but that's no big deal. Sometimes I'll allow them to grow into some of my lower lying trees or even shrubs. You don't necessarily need to have to get out there and become farmers and whack in stakes and God only knows whatnot. Use your own gardens as a place to grow food. You don't necessarily have to have a vegetable patch to be doing this. Front yard, backyard, wherever there's a hole, if you're pulling out weeds, you've got spots for all of these types of veg. And they don't necessarily need all full sun. The wider the leaf, the less sun they need. And in fact, and over the summer months, the sun's not that harsh that they're likely to get burnt. So, look for those little spots. As I say, if you're pulling weeds out, you've got spots for some of these. And as I say, they're really, really easy to grow. Snow peas, these are sugar snaps. Again, very, very easy, delicious thing to grow. Even the small shoots you can cut off and throw in some of the winter salads that you might use. Time to get strawberries sorted out. Now, if you've got strawberries in the ground, you need to dig them up. Don't leave them in because they will get matted and very, very thick, and they don't become so productive the following year. And you need to divide them up. And what I do is I grow them on a fence, as you can see, in half pots, one underneath the other. And as you can see, I've got some irrigation across the top of it. So those little dribblers that are on the very bottom of that, I can unscrew and let more water out or less water out. And I just fill the top pots, let the timer go for about 30 minutes, and it flood fills the top pot and they drip on down through the rest, and the whole lot get watered all at once. Really easy way of growing food, particularly if you're short of space. And it doesn't necessarily need to be strawberries. This could be lettuce or bok choy or pak choy or spinach or, any of the things that we've mentioned so far. Carrots, ideal time to get carrots in. So carrots is a bit of a trick with carrots because you often have to sow them in a run or in a line. And what I do is, and of course they get very, very thick, and you can't leave them all like that. You've often got to thin them out. So you've got to take, every probably 3 or 4 out and leave one, and then take 3 or 4 out and leave one, so that you've got room to grow them. And we call that thinning out. So what I like to do is to plant some radishes. So what you do is you mix up some radish seed and equal amounts of carrot seed, of whichever one you like. And I put a small amount, about the same amount of seed raising mix, and I give that a really, really good mix up in a little jar. And I make my little run in the soil, scratch back the mulch, and I then drizzle in that mixture. And as they start to come up, what happens is, as the radishes grow, they start to push the carrots away, and they actually make room for the carrots. Now, the radishes grow really, really quickly. So what ultimately happens is that you'll harvest the radishes a bit like bok choy in about 4 to 6 weeks. They really do get along very, very quickly. And what happens when you pull out the radishes, you've made room for the carrots. And now you don't have to worry about thinning out the carrots and wasting all those carrots, because quite often they don't transplant very well, which is unfortunate. So when I do plant carrot seeds, I always make sure that I pack down the ground reasonably well, not too hard, but certainly so that there's no little nooks or crannies in the soil, because if there are little holes, the seed's so fine that the seed sometimes falls down between the cracks, and people think, I didn't get a very good germination, but it's because they didn't prepare the soil properly. So and you don't need to put them in very deep. They only need to be around about twice the depth of the thickness of the seed, which is very shallow in comparison to a lot of other seeds. So just a very shallow run or drill, we call it, and sprinkle in your seeds, then just cover that over with a little bit of seed raising mix is best. Water it in really, really well, and then put a plank of timber like I've got displayed here over the top, and that will help keep the moisture in until they start to germinate. Now, they may take about 10 to 12 days before they germinate. All you need to do is just to lift up the side of the plank and have a look, and if they're germinating, then take the plank away. But if they're not, just put the plank back down. That'll help keep the soil nice and moist. It works a treat, believe me. Another good one, these are broad beans. So these are the scarlet coloured flowered broad beans. They're fantastic. They really are. I mean, a lot of people way back in the sort of 70s, people, when these first sort of came to Australia, people didn't really know how to cook them. And I remember my mum used to cook them and boil the hell out of them, and they'd tip most of the goodness down the sink, and they'd be a terrible grey-green bean on the plate. But we've come a long way. So we've learned how to deal with them. Once you pop them out of the pod, there's actually another skin on the bean. So you actually need to peel these again once they've been slightly boiled or blanched. And you'll see two little discs of the bean inside. They're magnificent. Or you can use them like this. I find that they tend to go a bit dry like this. So I like to twice peel them. But mark my words, they're a great veg if you know how to cook them properly. Cauliflower, of course, that's another one for this time of year. Please don't plant your cauliflower or broccoli together because you'll get that cabbage white moth all over the place. Put them here and there and surround them with a bit of lettuce and a bit of beetroot and whatever else you're planting, and then do the same group somewhere else so that they're spread out all over it, so that the insects don't see what you've got. They recognise things by leaf shape, and if they see a whole bed of broccoli or cauliflower, it's going to be happy days. They're going to invite all their mates, and you're going to get eaten out of house and home. So make sure if you're going to put a couple together, make sure you get a white viola or a white pansy, because the flower looks a bit like one of them. They're very territorial, and they'll tend to stay away from those beds. As you can see, there's all sorts of different varieties of broccoli you can get these days, so check out your local nurseries. I also alluded to before a little earlier, if you've got a space for a bok choy, you've also got a space for beetroot. And again, with like the broccolis and the carrots, there are a whole range of different colours you can get these days. These are all heirloom varieties, so they're magnificent. And roast beetroot on a cold day, along with a decent tray of roast veg, is fantastic. You also got Brussels sprouts, so it's not too late to get Brussels in, but make sure that you don't wait too much longer, because you really need to use what little of the warmer weather we have, albeit that today's not a good example, but we're about 15 degrees here at the moment. But those 20-degree days, we still got them at this latter part of autumn, so make good use of it. Beetroot again, we've talked about beetroot, so we'll slip on. Fennel is another one you can get in the ground, very easy veg to grow as well, and also not too late. This is an unusual one, absolutely worth growing, great in stir fries, called kohlrabi. That's the purple variety of it. There is a green one as well. Perpetual spinach. This is a perennial spinach that will take you all the way through into next year with spinach. Fantastic plant, very economical. Don't buy a whole punnet of it, just buy a small pot of it. You don't need very much to grow. Rocket is another great one to remember. Obviously in the lettuce family, and when you're pushing for space, think about hanging baskets. Look at how this has come up. I've got a red, a green lettuce, and some violas in a hanging basket. So here's and by the way, make sure that you're getting in some of the flowers that you can put in there. Marigolds, mind you, it is starting to get a little late for marigolds, but you still nonetheless you might get them in and overwinter them. Lobelia, and on all of those wonderful wintry, cooler climate seedlings that you'll be seeing in the nurseries at the moment will suit very well in amongst your garden, and mix those up in amongst your edibles. Well, with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this little segment. I'm sure there'll be others to come. If you would like some more information about how to grow your own food or how to become a bit more self-sufficient, you can grab a copy of one of my books at my website at www.craigcastree.com.au. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.